Council meeting date, that has been switched over to 8 p.m. And the clerk is going to re-advertise for that delay of the meeting. Zoning issue, we have something from Wayne. I brought it to his attention, but there is a horribly dilapidated building that's all the way down the end of Ninth. It's a public health concern because it's my understanding that it's rat infested and it's got to be taken care of real soon. So the bank is going to have to work on that and clean up that property.
I understand, we got that information as well, and that's some zoning issues, so.
Okay. New business, I had a conversation, just reaching around the parameters of good idea, bad idea, but we probably should have something to the effect of a forest fire official, or it would actually maybe even be incorporated in with Jeff Cornew's position as the emergency management. He's going to discuss that with someone else who's actually, in fact, an employee of Forest Fire, that being Dan Collins. But, you know, I have found out that there's grant monies that are available, and if we have a wildfire preventive plan put into place to protect our residents, that would be something that's been way, way long overdue for many years. And one of the things that is, two things that have sparked me on this, I had a conversation with one particular person who is on the emergency management team, and he asked me a question: what do you think is the biggest public safety concern in the community? And I thought about it for a while, and I says, in light of just what happened with Santa Barbara and the lives that were lost over there and the homes that were lost, it would probably be a good idea if we had some type of a wildfire preventive maintenance plan put into place. And I think that we really should have done this probably decades ago. This is a very rural community, but there's grant monies that are out there. There'll be guidelines to help educate people to.
The grants are to write the program.
There's grants that are in place to help educate people. Jeff is here. I'm going to call upon Jeff if you want to say anything that I'm going to leave out. I don't remember what that exact word was that he talked about the plan, but it would help to educate people, i.e. having rhododendrons growing right up against your house, very highly flammable, very, very highly flammable. But people should be made aware of the problems that they're creating for themselves. Piles of leaves, pile of dead, rotted wood that's been laying there for a long time. I mean, people should clean up the properties or whatever, but we need to have something that's in place, starting off with an educational forum for our residents.
But to get this information, some kind of program is going to have to be written, correct? Or is there one available?
There was a forest fire official that discussed this with us. His name was John.
Yeah.
Yep. And he said that there's a number of communities that in fact are moving forward on this here, and he will help to set all of the parameters as to how to make this thing work for us. That is his area of expertise, not mine, but I'm certainly all ears to hear what's good for the safety of our community.
I understand that that is something that the Forest Fire Service in the state of New Jersey provides to residents in any town.
That's correct.
My question is, why do we need to appoint a forest fire official? Since we already have a forest fire district
We have that, but there's going to be,
person in town.
I think that with our emergency management team, they're going to be having more work that's incorporated into what the current positions are to do. This is another layer of work that will be needed to be done. This isn't part of the regular emergency management.
That's something that's undertaken by the Forest Fire Service and the districts, and the district wardens. That's their position and their job to do that.
I'm going to defer right now to Mr. Cornew. Jeff, do you want to pick up some slack here about?
Just going on what Mr. Calvin said, he suggested we start out small and start with like a ready, set, go package. Being ready, like being aware of notifications if there's a forest fire, how to get information where it's at. We can put out our rebel ready to go. And get out early, have escape routes planned out, things like that. But it also suggests, instead of just one person, they should have like a council, a safety council, a wildfire safety council. It wouldn't be like a paid position, but like five-person council or something like that. I'm just going by what I wrote through the PDF.
And part of that grant money is for the administering of the paperwork that you have in your hands, so that all the residents can have it then at that point. Is that correct with what I understood that day?
Well, she gave some stuff to the clerk, to put on our website, I don't know.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
So that's available on our website now, some of the stuff. Literature. And, basically, he wants to have another meeting, so it might be wise and we have some council members attend that meeting.
Maybe we should always have him make a presentation to the governing body.
Yeah.
That would be the best way to do it. With the solicitor here as well, because if we're gonna have a council, then I think that may have to be done through an ordinance, to have an advisory group that's gonna be on this council. Didn't you say so, Fred? That should be done through an ordinance? Okay.
The Firewise program involves quite a bit, they'll go around and inspect your home and tell you, you shouldn't have this shit planted here against your house or firewood stored near your home. And they'll rate your community.
Yeah. I know in the past, members of the Forest Fire Service have provided that service to residents on their request. So they will go to the resident and give them an evaluation of their property and what they felt was the safest way to, remove brush and so forth and so on.
Yeah, they'll rate it high, medium, or.
Yeah.
Give you a chance to apply, get your grading down.
Anything else, Jeff, that I left out or should be brought in?
I think that's it.
All right, so you and I will talk about this later on, and we'll talk about having John come in and make a presentation, so that we can then take the next appropriate measure to enact this. Okay? All right. That's all I have on that. We have an upgrade to our peddler ordinance. We kind of briefly discussed that when it was open to the public, but Fred and I have had a conversation, and I have not clearly read through the peddler ordinance in itself. Fred, I believe, has, and made some comments and recommendations to strengthen what we currently have. There are some deficiencies in it, but I think that this is, once again, another effort to protect people from gypsy companies that are knocking on doors and wanting to provide services and get deposits up front, and then they disappear into the gypsy land.
Just need a copy of the ordinance and the information to go with it, so we can make a decision.
Okay. We have the soccer field maintenance. We did in fact have some quotes here
Right.
that we received.
New Rain, I think,
New Rain was the only one that actually gave you a quote, the other two companies did not respond.
Doctor, didn't I say something?
I'm sorry, Lawn Doctor, wrong name, wrong name.
So we have Lawn Doctor,
Yes.
and we have,
We solicited two others, but they did not respond, so the only actual quote you have is Lawn Doctor.
Lawn Doctor.
But we did the required solicitation.
And Lawn Doctor has been doing the field for a few years,
Yeah.
and
Good job.
they're the reason the field is as green as it is compared to what it was.
there's still a few brown spots here and there and that need to be corrected.
That's because before, there were only just a couple of green spots.
All right, so,
Someone else was there.
what do you want to do with this?
I would make the recommendation that we move forward and approve Lawn Doctor to do our maintenance plan for the next year, for this coming year. Let me make that into a formal motion. Can you second it, Larry?
I second it.
There's no other discussion, roll call please.
Mr. Barbetta?
Yes.
Mr. Buchanan?
Yeah.
Ms. Givens?
Yes.
Mr. Hughes?
Yes.
Mayor Benetti?
Yes. Has anybody had any thoughts on our community day with what we're doing? We're certainly not gonna do it in summertime, I don't think summertime is a good time to have a community day. People wanna be on the beach, they don't wanna be out where it's buggy. Fall would probably be a good time to do it. As the recreation committee come up with a,
I'm sorry, Joe, the Recreation Committee is not in charge of that. The Special Events Committee is in charge of that,
okay,
as it has been in the past 3 years.
right. You and I are on the committee, correct, Larry? Special events is, myself and Mr. Hughes. Would you guys like to do something in, mid-September? We'll have to start planning for it now, because before we know it, September will be here. I think there have been a couple of residents who have already, expressed an interest that they would like to help volunteer. And I would certainly welcome them. That would be Miss Lisa, and I think Judy Casagrande has already indicated she would like to be a part of that. I think that there's another resident in town, I don't want to speak to her, but she has also said that she would be available.
I would suggest that maybe we look at October like we did last year, so it's not as warm. September's gonna be pretty warm.
Even that day in October was hot when we had
We did
it.
it in October last year, and it was still warm.
The only problem with October is there's no corn there,
Right.
as it was in August. Yeah, that's the only problem with that. Yeah, I know.
So what are the other
Must
options?
be looking in the mirror.
What are the other options?
We did it in October last year because of the cold, basically.
Yeah, I would
A lot
agree,
easier
yeah.
for the-
I would
for the
agree.
residents. But that's entirely up to you.
Are you okay to want to do something in October? I mean, I'm okay with it myself. All right, so then the next issue would be, should we pick a date? Start moving forward to prepare?
I just think it's a little early yet to pick the actual date. We still have plenty of time to pick a date. We usually pick a date a couple
My
months
birthday's
ahead of
October
time.
13th.
Well, we have a, what is it, a big barbecue grill that we've already purchased, correct? And we have some other equipment that was, purchased as well, or just a barbecue?
So everything I brought from my house.
Okay. Well, this, excuse me, Linda, we'll have this revisited for the next meeting. I think it's something we should probably discuss briefly each meeting until we have this generalized as to where we're moving with.
Larry, didn't you have special meetings for that?
Yeah, we did.
Okay.
What I'm saying, we'll have it as far as setting the firm date and proceeding to make arrangements to get what we need to get for that particular day, whether it be hot dogs and burgers, whether we can get corn somewhere, whatever the case may be. But I would like to have our volunteers well acclimated so that way they're in a position to make it work smoothly. And I'm gonna have some of our kids involved in it as well, to help. Why are you looking like that?
Me?
Yeah, you're still a kid, right?
Yeah, it's okay.
Okay.
Involving children in that could be a JIF issue. You know,
I don't, well, yeah, I have to check too.
You gotta check with the JIF.
Fred? There? What do you think?
I think you're better checking than not. I mean, just
Check with our
such
risk
as-
management consultant, Martinberg Insurance.
Yeah.
Yep. Very good. All right, so we'll be moving forward with that. Next, we have the ACM JIF, County Municipal JIF memo from West Wildwood. I read through that very, very lengthy printout that they had.
Basically, if you've read the JIF, they just want you to acknowledge that you have received it, you understand what happened.
And Fred touched base on it as well.
Correct.
Okay.
So, we are aware.
Moving on.
Next, we have a proclamation recognizing Municipal Clerks Week, that being the week of May the 6th to May the 12th. Linda, do you actually in fact have a proclamation?
Yes, it's at the back of your packet.
I think that should be placed on our website.
And Facebook page.
Back to my packet, I kind of been jumbling through some
Oh,
stuff.
then-
Here it is. Yeah. Near the back end was the second to last. You wanna read this off? You're the clerk.
Well, somebody else can read it because it has my name.
Actually, I'll read.
There'll be a conflict.
Proclamation issuing Municipal Clerks Week for May the 6th to the 12th of 2018, whereas the office of the municipal clerk, time honored and vital part of local government, exists throughout the world, and whereas the office of the municipal clerk is the oldest among public servants, and whereas the office of the municipal clerk provides a professional link between the citizens, the local governing bodies, and agencies of government at other levels, and whereas municipal clerks have pledged to be ever mindful of their neutrality and impartiality, rendering equal service to all. Whereas the municipal clerk serves as the information center on functions of local government and community, and whereas the municipal clerks continually strive to improve the administration of the affairs of the office of the municipal clerk through participation in education programs, seminars, workshops, and annual meetings of their state, provincial, county, and international professional organizations. Whereas it is most appropriate that we recognize the accomplishments of the office of the municipal clerk, now therefore, I, Joe Venezia, Mayor of the City of Estell Manor, do recognize the week of May 6th through May the 12th, 2018 as Municipal Clerks Week, and further extend appreciation to our municipal clerk, Linda Kent, and to all municipal clerks for the vital services they perform and their exemplary dedication to the communities they represent. Dated this 9th day of May the 28th. Okay. We have, old business, is there any old business?
No old business.
No old business. And we have the personnel matter, I guess we're gonna go into executive session for that.
Review of the public first.
Someone make a motion?
Make a motion open to the public.
Second,
Second,
all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Mr. Owen?
Jim Owen, 195 Route 50. I just need a clarification. You guys were talking about DGA. Were you talking about DGA asphalt or is there a DGA gravel that you're talking
It's
about?
pulverized dirt, it's pulverized stone is what it is.
That's
Concrete.
asphalt.
Concrete.
No,
No, it's like.
Okay,
Concrete.
DGA concrete, so you can grade that. Okay, that's what I, because DGA asphalt, once it's hard, you can't grade it. That's what
This
I-
is a combination of different size aggregates and dirt.
Yeah, okay. I didn't know, I didn't realize they called it DGA.
it's not too far off the beaten path from Clay.
Yeah, no, I know what it is, but I didn't realize it was for DGA. I thought it was called something else.
Anything else, Mr. Owen?
There was one thing, but I don't remember. I'll get back to you.
So I think that's any purpose, right? Mr. Garrett?
When will they be starting Kentucky Avenue?
Based upon a conversation that I had with Michael, I think it's safe to say that your road will probably be completed by September.
We're talking late summer, early fall, is the last I did.
that's what he said in his report.
Yeah.
They'll let us know, I mean, you know, we'll probably have to move our mailboxes and stuff, because the road has,
Yeah, you'll be notified prior to.
okay, because I was under the impression they said May at the meeting before last.
May was when they were bringing the bids.
So is that what it
Yes,
was?
that's what we voted on tonight. The bids would be here, and we'll vote and award the contract in May.
Okay, okay. Thank you.
Mrs. Ray?
Last month you were talking about all the missing tools in the public works. And you said you didn't know what happened, but you guys are gonna look into it. Did you look into all the missing tools that were gone?
Missing tools?
He took tools.
There was no
No.
missing tools. We didn't have any
We
tools.
didn't have tools. The former foreman By his own tools.
So all the tools in there were his tools?
Yes.
Every tool?
There was no record prior to him starting, so he took what was his. We have a list of what we have now, but we have to go by what he took was what was his, because there's no record prior to him starting.
So the city didn't buy any tools for 5 years?
No,
He
they gave him a
actually-
tool allowance.
He actually got paid for using his tools.
How much did he get paid for using his tools?
I don't know the exact cost of that.
$5 an hour.
$5 an hour for every hour he worked?
So he got paid $200 a week. And one of the things that I come to find out, in speaking to the auditor, is that,
That's like $80-some thousand.
yeah, tell me about it. Could have filled up our building over there with tools for that amount of money we paid.
That wasn't.
One of the things I
But you
found
were
out,
mayor when you got the $5
that was your idea.
Oh,
And-
And it was your idea.
Your votes, Elizabeth passed it.
It was great, it was a great idea on your part.
Your votes passed it.
No, I think I abstained on that vote.
No, not your vote.
Look it up.
Your votes that were up here.
It doesn't matter, that's a lot of money.
Yes.
How many
Yeah.
tools you buy with $80,000?
Good God, we negotiated that.
Yeah,
One
but
of the things
tools
I
also
found
break.
out is the money that we paid towards his tool allowance, we have paid somewhere on or about close to $4,000 into his pension that we should have never paid, and the state may actually in fact owe us that money back.
Good luck with that.
We should have not paid into the pension.
We can't be talking about an employee.
Or passed.
Without a nice letter.
Employee or past employee.
We're talking about a business
You
transaction that we
can't
did.
talk about an employee.
Can't do it.
Okay. Anything else, Mrs. Faith?
No.
Jeff?
When you refer to his tools, are you referring to hand tools or power tools or?
Both.
There
We have
was
no chainsaws, no chainsaw sharpeners, anything like that?
pardon me?
Chainsaws, chainsaw sharpeners?
There is some chainsaws that belong to the city.
Yes, I know they were
They're there, there are some equipment there, but it's my understanding, and I wasn't here when that gentleman was hired, and I wasn't party to the agreement that was made for his tools, is that he was paid to bring his tools in and use his tools so that the city didn't have to purchase tools. That was my understanding of the way that went down. There was, most of the tools that he had, I think, air compressors, and he had a jack, I believe, and there were some power tools, and mostly hand tools that he took. There was no actual inventory of what was brought in by this person, and there was no inventory of what the city had at the time. So there's no way to tell who had what and where it came from.
Is there an inventory of what was purchased to the city?
Pardon me?
Is there an inventory of what was purchased to the city?
Yes, that would be called a bill list. That would certainly be on the bill list.
Listed
and that
as
is-
tools or is it listed as something?
The items that were purchased by the city would be listed, we would have that in there.
And
But there was no active inventory as to what the city owned prior to this person being hired and what this person brought in. So you had no way of knowing of what was there before and what came after.
But you do know what was purchased and what should be there.
We knew what's been purchased since then,
Since when? Since when?
since
Since he left or since?
anything that was purchased by the city had to go on the bill list for approval. So there is a record of that.
Okay. And that stuff's
But there's no active inventory.
Well,
Never was an inventory was ever taken, or never was there an inventory ever locked.
So as of right now, we have no inventory.
No, we have, yes,
We do now.
we have a list of current tools as of April 11th.
I did take the initiative to make sure that we did have an inventory, and that was one of the first things I said to John Wagner, that I wanted to have an inventory of tools.
So how often are you gonna, like, every 6 months?
Excuse me for a second.
Inventory
You want-
tools?
Let me call upon you before you just start
Oh,
speaking out
sorry,
of
I have to ask.
turn. Jeannie Olson.
Jeannie Olson, 164 7th Avenue East. Are they gonna change that so that like maybe do an inventory every 6 months? Like what things do you have in place
One of the things that I wanna
to
see.
assure this never happens again?
One of
It's
the things that I
travesty.
wanna see in place as we move forward is, quite
It's
frankly,
right, Nathan.
there's a bar scanner. It's a little handheld device.
Right, we
All
have
of our
it at school.
inventory tools
Right.
should be barcoded, take the scanner, it's downloaded onto a hard drive, soft drive, whatever it is, and then we have an inventory, what we have and what we do not.
And any purchases on the public works side will be emailed to the mayor and myself, because we're on that committee, so we'll also have record to go back upon to double check, to make sure what they're actually logging in is what they bought. So kind of like double checking it.
Yeah.
This idea of a full inventory or equipment inventory has been brought up months ago, when we realized that there was an issue, that there wasn't an inventory.
Yeah.
I mean, my husband was a carpenter, and every time he bought a tool, I had a book, and I could tell, like, he knew every tool we had.
Right.
I mean, we're just a homeowner, I mean, I have binders with all his.
And we don't, and that's sad.
It is.
It's
It is.
horrible.
It is.
All the
But we're
years
doing
and
it.
nobody's gotten that.
So, you know, the only thing we can do now is we can't correct what
Let's go
didn't
forward.
happen in the past. The only thing we can do now is make sure that we do it from this day forward. Starting this time, we'll make sure that everything is inventoried, that we'll have everything in place so we know exactly what the city owns and where it came from and what we paid for.
Thank you.
Vote.
Regarding the Conrail road closure issue, has there been any further information, or have you talked to anybody on that?
I haven't seen anything come across my,
All right.
box in the office
Who-
over there.
Who is actually the person who is going to be representing Estell Manor as the risk management consultant?
I thought that was done through reorganization.
Who is the person who is going to be representing Estell Manor as the risk management consultant as a result of tonight's action?
Contact person.
I would assume that it would probably be, Chris Bell.
He's the principal.
Yeah. I
He's
guess
the
so.
principal, but he was the principal last year, but he sent somebody else down.
I
So,
believe in the proposal, it means Chris Pipus.
Chris Pipus.
Is Mr. Fifus actually going to perform the services under the contract, or is that also going to be another issue later?
You want me to speak for Mr. Fifus?
I don't think I understand your question.
If you have a person who has been the point person, contact, whatever you want to call it, performing the work under the contract, if we know who that person is, then the question becomes making sure that in fact that person is actually going to perform some range between 8 and 28 of the parts of the job that are supposed to be done.
It's my understanding what has been done in the past with Hardenberg Insurance. They give you a designated person, and at some point, based on what is going on in that calendar month, that person may not be available to attend an issue, so they will appoint another person with their firm to represent us. We will always have representation, it just may not be that one person.
Well, I'm recalling that when it came time for the auditor, the appointment was very specific of who the person would be. And here you have a company that for the last number of years has failed, according to the GIF's own bylaws,
Well, we
to
have,
meet the minimum attendance requirements by anybody.
we have in the package a person listed as our contact person, and that's Chris Pipus. So all we can do is make sure that he lives up to their end of the bargain.
And will that be something that is regularly looked into?
This is something that the fund commissioner will make us make its information available to us if it's not working out.
And hopefully it would be something that we could agree on is a factual question of whether the person is there or not. Just like if you say 2 and 2 equals 4, Whether a kindergartner tells you that or a mathematics professor, it is still a fact. So it's not subject to a conflict of interest. It is simply a fact of whether that happens or not.
I think we'll
Anything else, Reed?
Yeah, regarding the newsletter, because of graduation, we will be putting the newsletter, having it ready for publication the day after